Yeah. My name is Dominic Cody Kramers. I'm a board president here, which is a fancy title, meaning that I get to spend this evening with you and Susie and introduce this evening to you all. We're going to be hearing about this wonderful installation called Tokio Florist Project by Susie Kozawa, Brigid Kelly, and Alex MacInnis. And we're going to begin the evening with a short land acknowledgement. Today we meet on the lands of the Duwamish, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot nations and other Coast Salish peoples, past and present. The staff, board, and artists of Jack Straw Cultural Center acknowledge that we are living, creating, working, and playing on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle and the Salish Sea, and we honor them and the land itself with deep gratitude. We also want to give deep thanks to many of the folks who help support Jack Straw and its artists through the various artist residency programs here: Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, For Culture, Washington State Arts Commission, National Endowment for the Arts, Arts Fund, the Rainier Foundation, and of course individual contributors like yourselves. And lastly, a big shout out to Daniel and Aaron, our audio and video and internet engineers who are working behind the scenes here this evening. So give them a round of applause. And I'll turn it over to Susie and Alex. And Brigid, excuse me, yes.
Yes, I wish Alex was here. Hi, I'm Brigid Kelly, and I am going to talk to you about the Tokio Florist Project. I'm here with Susie Kozawa. We are collaborating together on this project, and Alex MacInnis was also a big part of this. He's not with us today. Another person in the audience is Laura Castillo, and she is here. She's our technical director, and every day we pray to the universe that nothing happens to Laura, because she has been such a critical part of making the magic that you see in the other room happen, and she keeps it going. So take care of Laura. And thank you for joining us on this crazy trip. So I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about the Tokio Florist collaboration. So there are basically 4 artists working on this project. It really started with an NPR pitch that I was doing. I also want to mention, and I'm horrible at PowerPoint, so this is just going to be the worst PowerPoint presentation you've ever seen. But there's so many people that have been part of helping us along this project. The road has definitely risen to meet us. We're really grateful to Jack Straw and everybody here. We've had generous donors that have just helped us in every way possible. Li Wei Yang and Veronica Aguirre from the Huntington Library have helped us with images. Kathy Gudis from UC Riverside has been a huge part of helping us with the history and background on the project. Sun Wong at the Barr Foundation, Julia Meltzer and Kat Yang at Clock Shop, Kristen Hayashi at the Japanese American National Museum. So many people have helped us with this. We've had all these other angel artists help us as well, and their names are on the list. Some of them are here. So thank you, everybody, for your help. We could not do this without you. So there's a lot to talk about. I'll tell you a little bit about how a radio story turned into an immersive a documentary, basically, that you'll see in the other room. Little bit about how other people came onto the project and have brought it all together. And Susie's gonna take us out at the end of talking more about her art practice, her instruments, and then we'll answer some questions. So what ended up happening was, I'm from LA, and I have been living in Silver Lake, and Tokio Florist is in the Silver Lake neighborhood. And so there's a project at KCRW, which is the local affiliate in Los Angeles, that's called the Independent Producers Project. And the Independent Producers Project is about helping independent producers tell stories about Los Angeles that people might not otherwise know, unknown stories about various histories that haven't been, told, or things in your neighborhood that you don't know a whole lot about. I've done a number of projects for the Independent Producer Project. So as I walk through life, I'm constantly looking for opportunities to pitch the Independent Producer Project. And so I've been I've been keeping an eye on the Tokio Florist property, and I'm going to tell you more about that. So I'll keep moving. So this is my walk to Trader Joe's, and this is the Trader Joe's in Silver Lake, and behind this foliage is Tokio Florist. It's next door to a Jersey Mike's as well. So I would walk by and I would peer in this gate and wonder what's back there. And you can also see part of Tokio Florist as you're in the parking lot. So you'd peer through the gate and you'd get a glimpse of this big house, but you wouldn't know what it was. But one day, an estate sign popped up, and it said that they were clearing out the house. So I had tried calling the Tokio Florist number on the sign outside, and nobody answered. And so I started sleuthing, and I looked at the Again LA estate sale website, and they talked about the fact that this was 4 generations of the Susie Kozawa family's property that was going up on this estate sale. So then I started doing some internet sleuthing, and I ran across Susie Kozawa, Susie's mom. And so she had been incarcerated at Manzanar during World War II, and this was a oral history of hers. And in the course of the oral history, she said, I have a daughter who's a sound artist in Seattle. So then I started Googling daughter, sound artist, Seattle, and I finally found Susie, and I tracked her down. And so I'd done other stories about various parts of Los Angeles history, and I came and knocked on her door, and I said, hey, I want to pitch the story to KCRW. Can I follow you as you get rid of all this stuff in your house and go through this process? And maybe I'll be able, as you're going through all of this stuff, it'll reveal some history that would be interesting to listeners, and we can help tell the story of the house and the property. So she let me in the front gate, and I walked through the property as she was leading me in. And so these are some images from the property. I came through the front door. The house is pretty magical. And here's Susie. So this is the first time I meet Susie. She's taking these bells off of the door. And this is the first sort of clue I get to who Susie is. She's a sound artist, and she's very aware of things that generate sound. And so she's making sure before the people come in and buy everything that this very important piece is taken down. And so Susie and I started talking. Susie's task, she's the estate executor for Tokio Florist. Her job is to clean out this house and to either sell the things that are in the house, place them at museums, or get rid of them, like throw them in the trash, and then sell the house. So she's got a big job on her hands. Most of the time she'd be wanting to do the sound recording and stuff herself because she collects sounds, but she was busy doing all this. So she let me in, and I saw like kind of the depth of all the stuff that she had to get rid of. And this is stuff from the estate sale. So the house was full of 4 generations of Japanese American belongings. It had really been a repository for the family. It's interesting, I could get into the history. Some of the history's out on the gallery wall. So if you scan the QR codes, you'll learn more. You can hear her mom's interviews for the Densho archives. You can see what the Huntington Library has taken into their own collection, and then you can learn about the historic landmark status of the house. But as they were emptying all this stuff out, I got to kind of see all the people coming through and what they were selling. So the room that you're going to see in the installation is the dining room, and I wanted to just show you some pictures of what the dining room looked like when there was stuff in here. So this is from the estate sale when they'd put everything up. So that's one of the walls you'll see as you go in. It has the stained glass in the background. This is the kitchen wall. When you're in the exhibit, you would be seeing through the door. This is the porch wall. And this is Susie talking to one of the many people that wanted to talk to her at the estate sale. So getting to know Susie. So Susie had told me she's a sound artist, but I didn't quite understand what that meant. And what that meant was Susie would take a look at things, and if it made sound, she was really interested in it, and it didn't really matter how much it was worth or any of that stuff. She would kind of check the pitch or the ability to make it into an instrument. And so she took me downstairs and showed me her sound instruments. And so she had some copper bells and such. So the house cleared out. And as the stuff was starting to go away, I again saw Susie interacting with things, checking for pitch. This is her banging on some vases to see like what note they would make, etc. And here we are in the empty flower cooler. But the story isn't over. So the sale ended, but the story wasn't over. And the question of the house and the history it had to tell wasn't resolved yet. So I kept sticking around. And so what I'd witnessed was as the house emptied out, Susie would go through and kind of check how the sound of the house had changed. She'd check the resonance, and she'd go through and test it with different things. One of the things she tested with was this dog clicker. And so I followed her through the house as she was using this dog clicker to make sounds to hear what it sounded like. And there was the definite moment in time when I realized that the little microphone that I was carrying to follow her with was going to not quite capture the story of Susie experiencing sound in the house to the degree of which I thought needed to be done. And so it was noted that I might need some more help on this. So Susie started, as she was getting rid of stuff, she started having performances, and I heard about this performance at UC Riverside. So I saw her get her instruments together, and this is, again, as she's kind of revealing herself to me, she's here making a humbo. And you can see that it's a bamboo. Well, I'll let Susie explain what all this stuff is. But in the background, you can see part of what will end up being the installation. That's the dining room. So Susie's showing me how she's making her instruments. She goes into the dining room and tests them. And then I go and see her perform at UC Riverside. And so Susie is so low key about everything. She's just like, yeah, I'm going to just go perform and whatever. And so I went and saw her perform, and it blew my mind. And I just thought, okay, she performs in these historic spaces and activates them. I'll let her explain more of her process, but essentially she scans the soundscape of a space, and then she uses the found objects that she uses for instruments to interact with that space. And as an audience member, you start to hear things that you would disregard otherwise, and it becomes this sort of duet jazz ensemble that you didn't know that you've always been in, right? And so I came out of this piece and I thought, wait a second, she lives in a historic space. Let's see if we can get like a performance of her in her childhood home and capture that in some way. And back to me, and these are some basic ideas that I just went through. So better call Alex, because my little rinky dink mic was not going to be able to do this job, right? So Alex is this guy that we're so sad is not here. His name is Alex MacInnis. And again, this radio piece that I was developing would never have gotten to the place that it is without the engineering expertise of Alex MacInnis. Okay. So Alex came and met Susie on a rainy. I called Alex and I was just like, hey, I've got this random story that I'd like to tell you about. I got to figure out a way to do a performance recording. I have no idea what I'm doing. Is there any way you could, for the price of a cup of coffee, you can tell me everything you've ever learned about sound recording? And he said, sure. And so he came and we talked about it. And then he was like, okay, I'll come and meet Susie. Let's see what you would need to do this performance. So he came on a rainy day. And he saw Susie out in the yard putting out her rain drums. And so it was raining. She'd created these rain drums. And when the drops hit them, they make these beautiful sounds. So Alex and Susie fell in love. And Alex was like, I'm in. Let me know when the house is about to sell, and I'll come and do all of the engineering that you need for that, right? So Alex is, just as an aside, worked for the artist Bill Viola and has a lot of international big format experience in high-end art. So it would be like having Yo-Yo Ma like play at your wedding or something. And so Alex, ends up coming and participating in this. And so he comes and captures the audio. But I'm going to fast forward because I think I'm losing time. Just want to let you know that part of the challenge of the story has been that there's such a depth of history involved. And so we had to start thinking about what is this that we're trying to do? I had started doing a radio piece, but it was so vast and it was kind of never ending. So we started going more towards an idea of still honoring what is the house and what's the significance of the space, but rather can we convey that through a performance and through experiencing the house as sort of an immersive experience? How can I place all of you in the space of Susie's house so that you can understand the space that she grew up in and understand this performance that she's doing? I could tell you about it on the radio, but I really wanted to drop you into the experience of the thing. And so, in addition to that, quick pause. There are all these experts from all these fantastic places coming through and grabbing all of the Susie Kozawa archives because they were such a big part of Los Angeles history. So I'm just like going to zip through and let you know they had a lot of great stuff. And all of these rock star museum people came to look at it. And so that's part of the background for the story, okay? I'll get back to that at the end. But so all of a sudden, the house has started to clear out. The museum people have come and grabbed things. It's time, like if there's going to be a performance that we're going to grab, we got to do it now before the new guy comes in and gets the keys and kicks us out, right? So all of a sudden, we've got to do this. And so we've been talking about this a little bit. Susie's collected the instruments that she wants to use as we record her. What we end up doing is we pick 3 locations in the house. The one that's featured here is the dining room. We also did a recording outside, and we did a recording upstairs. But I'm going to focus on the one that we actually have in the other room. So, why the dining room? The dining room is quarter sawn oak, and it is all wood. So the resonant qualities of that are especially sweet and interesting. And you'll see this if you go into the other space. This is kind of what it looks like. It had been the space where they would celebrate big occasions, all of that type of stuff. It had also been their business office. So a lot of the essential activities kind of came to play together in the dining room, and that's where Susie performs in this piece. This is a picture of Susie and her mom in the dining room. The stained glass work is in the back of them. Okay, so Susie grabs all of her instruments and lays them out for us. This is Susie with the ambisonic mic. So we recorded initially, and when we were talking about this, we had thought only about doing an audio recording because that's most of what, Susie's a sound artist. We were like, great, audio recording. Alex had this thing at his house. It's an ambisonic mic. It captures 360 audio. It's really amazing. It gives you a lot of distance and everything. I'm not the person to tell you about the technical elements of that, but it's cool. So Susie, we used that to record Susie. And we do that's Alex in the background. And we do some recording upstairs and downstairs. And this is Susie playing the crank box around the ambisonic mic in the dining room. And that audio is in the piece down the hall. This is Susie using with the wiggly gigglies. Those are the balls that you hear in the piece. This is Alex catching some audio of Susie playing the walls. That's the groaning sound when you get in the piece. So it's the rubber balls against the wood. And the cool thing about Alex is he's got a huge bag of tricks, and he had a contact mic like you would use on a guitar or something, and he mic'd up the walls to turn the walls into an instrument. Okay, so Susie on the crank box walking through the background. The pandemic happens. There's nothing but turkey meatballs at Trader Joe's, and it's time to call it quits for a while. So we do the recording. We've got everything on ice, right? And now we're like, okay, what are we going to do with all this? So we applied for the residency here at Jack Straw, and we got it. And so we needed to start figuring out how we were going to put this together. So I'd seen the piece, The Visitors by Ragnar Knudsen, and it looked like this. It reminded me, it takes place in an old house. And I thought, okay, now that we've got the content, we have to think about the container. How are we going to put this together to make it an immersive experience? So thank you, Ragnar. Bill Viola is the person that Alex worked with. He was an inspiration. Pilote Reese also is an artist that is in the immersive space. So we started designing it. There's too much of me right now, so I'm gonna get out of the way so Susie can start talking. But these are some of the things that we started talking about. We watched the playback in a basement. Alex had put together. So in the meantime, Alex shot everything and recorded everything in the field. When we came back and we got this residency, Alex then became the composition, or he did the composition, used all the audio and put a composition together. He also cut the 4 walls of video and had the media files together, right? And then we have Laura Castillo ends up being our tech director. Thank God. And so she takes on this project with all the media, and she starts figuring out how to install it in the Jack Straw space. You can see right here that the projector's on the floor. So the experience that you have, the screens, it's all rear projected. There are extreme short throw projectors behind the screens in the gallery, so you can see them here. That's the secret. And then there's audio on many channels with subwoofers. This is the crew. These are the screens before they get dressed, so you can see more of what they look like. This is Laura with the brains under the, she's running the machine. And these are people in the exhibit. So just for people at home, if anybody can see this, this is what you would see if you walk into the gallery. There's some history on Tokio Florists. There's some background on Susie's sound instruments. And then the big takeaway we want to ask you is, what do you hear? And so we hope that as you go through the piece that you'll be more aware of the sound environment that you're in. I'll let Susie talk more about that. But we also are in a place where we've had the ability to practice and put all of this stuff together at Jack Straw, and our hope is that it will go somewhere else after this. So that's what we're up to next. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Thank you, and it's now Susie's turn.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to see so many old friends. To me, Los Angeles and Seattle is one humongous city. uh, so, I don't know. Is this okay? Okay. So, I believe every space has its own sonic personality. And so I'm a sound artist, and I explore different spaces and see how I can sonically dance with the sounds that are already there. I also make sound instruments out of found objects, and I also do field recordings of found sounds. So the Tokio Florist Project was a convergence of the spheres for me. It's a convergence of the spheres of my past, where I came from, and together with what I am now. And I'm not usually in, I'd rather be heard and not seen. And it's okay if you don't consciously hear me anyway. But so there is not much, visual documentation. But for me, watching what Brigid and Alex did, this is the clearest documentation of how I listen and what I hear. This was so, this is such a gift to have this. Just a background of Tokio Florist. So my grandmother, Yuki Sakai, started Tokio Florist in 1929 on Los Feliz Boulevard, which is like maybe a mile and a half away from where we had moved to in 1960. When we moved to this, the Hyperion address in 1960, my parents and grandmother set up a floral work area on the front porch of the house and the side of the house, with plans to build a storefront, a floral shop storefront in the front. But then so many customers said, please don't build a storefront. We really like going up the driveway and going to your work areas and wandering through this jungle of trees and flowers, and also my father's koi pond that he made. So we never did have a storefront. So this was the outside of the house. So the inside of the house, which is a large house, it was a humongous cabinet of curiosities, like you saw during the estate sale, all the things. Well, actually, our house was like that. There was no open space anywhere in the house. Our place was filled with floral supplies, and some were pre-war floral supplies. Also, inside the house, it was filled with 4 generations of items and documents, and a lot of items that we collected because we liked them. I thought, growing up, that every house had garden gnomes on the inside of their house. and like, for instance, we had a big, it was the guest bathroom upstairs with a humongous tub. I call it the bordello bathroom because it had red velvet glitzy wallpaper. But anyhow, we hardly ever used it because it was so large. So my parents had put in a little, like a lily pond, and they had a garden gnome sitting on the edge with a fishing pole. So it was that kind of stuff all over the house. Anyhow, like I said, there's no open space inside the house. And the estate sales owner, Dan Jordan, said, when he first looked at it, this is comparable to 4 regular, normal houses, plus business. And so usually a estate sale takes 2 weeks from beginning to end. So it took them over a month, I think almost a month and a half for processing. And then we had a 5-day rather than a 3-day normal estate sale. But it was such an amazing time meeting all these old customers and friends that wanted something to remember my parents or my grandmother or Tokyo Florist by. And so the estate sales people estimated between 3,000 to 5,000 people came. So anyhow, after the estate sale, and everybody had gone, except for Brigid and I noticed how different the inside of the house sounded, because the empty house was a lot more resonant. And so that's when I went around to all the different rooms with my clicker that you saw, and just hearing what each room sounded like. And unfortunately, I mean, what I loved about Brigid when she first introduced herself and said, "Can't you record the goings on?" I was so happy, because that's what I would be doing, as for field recording, but I was busy doing other things, and so it was like having another ear and another witness to the sounds that are going on. But she was following me as I was clicking through all the different rooms and saying, because I knew it was recording, "This is the dining room, this is the breakfast room," and like that. So really, Brigid Kelly and Alex MacInnis, they allowed me to explore and play the house as a sound instrument, which it wouldn't have occurred to me without them to do. And so both of them allowed me, as a gift, allowed me to give a kind of benediction and release the home I grew up in. So this Tokyo Florist Project is an experiment to determine the technology and equipment needed to pull this off. And so we're so fortunate to have Laura Castillo to be our technical director. She understood our intentions and had ready solutions how to bring the project about. So it was like four legs of this table. Without one leg, it wouldn't have happened. Jack Straw, New Media Gallery, once again gave us an experimental lab to work things out in. I don't know of any other public access venue that offers this opportunity. Okay, and so if you had gone into the installation, I'll do a show and tell with some of the sounds you heard. Okay. First, there are some things that I want to explain, and how I use the house as a sound instrument. Okay, these are super balls on skier sticks. Okay, and so this is what I use to play the walls and the floor. And so you recognize the sound. I gotta use this one.
Yeah.
So and sometimes I had them, two of them making a dialogue conversation with each other. Mm-hmm. And this is where I really loved that Alex was there with his contact mics, and he was recording that conversation. People know. Let's see. The other thing I want to show that I used the house for, I used the house as an amplifier and resonator. So this is, let's see if this works. This is a little, you've seen these, they're very quiet. Yeah, very quiet. But, yeah, very quiet. But I put it on the walls and on the floor. So basically the whole wall was an amplifier and resonator. The whole floor was an amplifier and resonator. And I'll show you another star at the end. Let's see. Oh, something else that you heard and did not see. I have this newspaper in case I break something. Okay. So many of the instruments I used were found objects around the house. And it wasn't in this piece, but they look like brandy snifters, but those are all floral vases that I used. Let's see. So those were some of, oh yeah. I didn't realize that you didn't actually see this, but this was the other. I call this a baseball fun. And this is the one that I use up here. The one I have down in Los Angeles is my traveling baseball phone, because it's more, it breaks down easier for traveling with. It's just plumbing supplies and a tin, an old film canister and a balloon. Oh, and a laboratory pipette part. So that was the other sound. Let's see. The other cast of characters are on the table. Oh, and under the table. So these are also rain drums. If you take any jar and you get a balloon, cut the neck off, and turn it inside out. And if you turn it inside out, there's inside of each balloon is some kind of a powder, so it's not sticky. So the trick is to turn it inside out and put it on top of, and you could make put it on top of the top. And you could sort of, by how tight or loose the balloon is, you can make the pitch high, low, medium. So these I used that you heard and saw, and I had BBs and marbles in them, and I rolled them on the floor and also upstairs in my grandmother's room, which was directly above. So here's looking at you, kid. And that because the house was a little bit uneven, it was great because sometimes, like especially the gallon jars with the marbles would roll back, would roll forward, and then it would come back. You know. Here's the tip scoop. I think these are copper BBs, and so maybe the stainless steel BBs are better. And let's see, these were the other kinds of rolling balls. You heard these are massage balls. They have little bells on. Let go. Yeah. more music balls. And I don't have any round, strong magnets. So imagine this is a round ball rather than cylinder. Thank you. But this is what you saw that made the sizzling noises. And also steel ball bearings, they're larger than that. Marbles are different sizes. Those were the other rolling things. The rocks, if you pick up any rock, and if you find a flat rock, cup it in your palm. And with another rock, by opening and closing your palm, you could make the pitch. If there are two people with rocks, you could carry on a dialogue. Yeah, can you pick up a gallon of milk for me? That kind of a thing. This is a toy mouthpiece, but it plays overtones. Now, up here in Seattle, I have my kelp instruments, and this sounds like the kelp, my kelp horns, but I don't know how to transport them down. So, but this has its own quality of sounds. And so you saw that odd person playing all these things. Oh yes. I call this a crank top because this was originally inside. It looked like a toy top, but it didn't do anything as a top because it shaped like a toy top, but it had this little crank. So I tore it apart, of course. And this is what the inside was. It has so many different qualities and characters. Oh yeah. Okay, here are the kids. At least my Seattle kids. This one's a little pouty.
What are they?
They're called Wiggly Gigglies, and you see them for little babies and little kids. Wiggly Gigglies. You also see them in pet stores. These are the kinds of toys you give to other people's, to other parents and other people's pets. So, this last one that you heard. This is another. This is a liqueur bottle. Actually, the original that was recorded is still down in Los Angeles because it was still filled with liquor. It was on our people. It was throughout the years, decades, different kinds of wines and liquor. So this is on the cabinet, the kitchen cabinet for years.
Is there a ballerina in that?
Yes. Now let's see.
Oh, is she gonna dance?
Can we have the lights? Turn the lights off.
Lights off or on?
All of them off. Okay. Turn. This was very handy because it was a music box that I did not have to crank. So while this was going on in one pitch, I could play other music boxes that are in a different that were in a different pitch. So it could be either consonant or a little bit dissonant. So anyhow, that's why the music box, the ballerina, was in a lot. So thank you. How are we doing for time?
6:49.
Okay.
Okay, so questions?
Yes.
We actually have a microphone.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
pass that around for folks that are streaming in.
How am I going to get this so it doesn't keep playing? If you don't mind, that'll just get tired and go. Pardon?
Did the radio piece ever get made?
So the question was, did the radio piece ever get made? No, but I have all of the material. So this thing got to be pretty big, and I've actually been documenting the process and talking to Susie throughout the process about developing this idea so that can get incorporated into it. So it's still a work in progress. Yes.
Whatever happened to Tokio Florist?
Susie?
So, the property was sold to a company called Red Car down in Los Angeles that are into creative adaptive reuse. And after the estate sale, during the estate sale, a lot of neighbors and friends, customers, they had never been on the inside of the house, and they saw how beautiful the house was, and there were even more people up in arms about the fate of Tokio Florist. Kathy Gudis is with LA Conservancy and others. They co-authored. I'm gonna hold this. Swig it. So they wrote application for landmark status together with Little Tokyo Historical Society and some other organizations. They put the motion through, and then so the property is a national is a city.
Yeah, city of LA landmark.
Yeah, city. Yeah, and Red Car embraced that. They were going to. They were planning on making it into office buildings with some small retail, like maybe a coffee shop in the front, but the property was fallow for a number of years, and a lot of that was COVID. And then they said also it was like the difficulty in getting the permits to proceed. But in the meantime, like what you saw was the property looking very sad. So anyhow, this is amazing because this was. And then all of a sudden in October, there was a for sale. Anyhow, October there was all of a sudden a for sale sign that Adina told me, and it was caught everybody by surprise. And anyhow, in talking with the broker just recently, he said, yeah, it was COVID, and also after COVID, the interest rates went exorbitantly high. Plus, they're still having trouble with their permits. And after we opened this in March 22nd, like March 31st, the Red Car broker said that the property has been sold, and actually just closed last last week?
Friday.
Last Friday, and it's very hopeful because the person that bought it has been following Tokio Florist for quite some time and fell in love with the place, and he wants to restore the house, the building, and to restore the gardens. So it's very hopeful. So this is just so recently, yeah.
I'm thinking about your journey, and so how long or what was it like? I'm trying not to be a sportscaster asking how does it feel. but when were you alone for a lot of this process before the collaboration started?
Yes, I'm the only child, and actually, that could be better than having siblings, because I've heard so many horror stories that I'm so fortunate did not happen with me. You know, but that whole process has been such an amazing journey, meeting all kinds of humanity. Yeah. Yeah.
As a sound artist, it sounds to me that you're generally going into unfamiliar spaces and exploring them with sound. And I wondered, well, I was surprised to hear you say that it wouldn't have occurred to you to explore this house. And if you could just say more about kind of what you noticed about the difference in that experience going into a space that was so familiar.
It was so much more resonant because there wasn't so many objects. So during the estate sale, I met it was an architect named Michael Rotondi with ArtSci, and I was talking with him, and when all these it was swarms of people, and here he always stood out because he would be just standing still and just beaming, looking at the architecture. And finally, when I met him, it turns out he's an architect, and so we had a really wonderful, conversation. Because all this time it was me as, okay, the executive of the estate, and this was the time I could talk about art. And how I described it was, with the estate sale, it was like removing the exquisite carcass, so that now the beauty of the bones of the building could shine through. So it wasn't until the house was completely empty that I realized it sounds so different. And so when I was exploring, it was my exploration of this different space that was familiar and yet was totally different. Yeah. Hi, Steve. Oh, hi, Laurie.
Oh, hi. I was very lucky to get to spend a little time in the space, and also with your parents. And but one thing that always was a big part of the story of that space for me was that the building was moved to its current location.
Yes.
So I was curious about that, and then also it was amazing to sort of hear all of your interactions, like you were saying about that you had to bring in all these different kinds of experts, and the one that was really tantalizing for me were the plant people, that the plants that were there really blew this guy's mind. So I wondered if you could talk about this.
So let's see, the first question was about yes. So the house was built in the 1900s, but
I've got the timeline.
but anyhow, that's so we're only the second owners. The first owners, Dr. Brigham and his wife. It was built in the.
I think it was in the teens. Gosh, I can't
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but it
I'll
was
get,
in
I'll
the-
get
But
there.
It was near
It
USC.
was closer to the Adams,
Yeah,
West
Adams.
Adams area.
Yeah.
So what would have been a suburb of LA at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a doctor who
Yeah,
had funny
osteopath.
practice,
He-
not trained quite as an MD.
No, he was an osteopath.
Osteopath.
Yeah,
He was an
it's a
osteopath.
different kind of a
But
doctor.
He had a lot of ads in the paper, which was very helpful to us.
Oh, I didn't know that. But anyhow, so back in those days, I mean, with all the craftsmanship, it made sense that they would move houses rather than tear it down and build again. So he cut the house in half, or had the house cut in half and moved half by half. And until, before the estate sale, this is how I first met Kathy Gudis, was through Sojin Kim. I wanted to know, I don't know if there's anything of value to any organization or person or group, that I can give things to. Or if there's any historical, cultural, social, botanical, things of value. So then through Sojin, and also you recommended many different specialists. And so the botanist, Lisa, anyhow, and her husband came. And they were saying, oh my God, they were so wonderful. And they later on, she sent me information on a lot of the greenery. But there's so many, also so many trees and plants. They said, I've never seen this kind before. What is that? What do you think? But what was so wonderful about Lisa was that she identified a lot of the greens as being floral greens. And that's when I realized my parents and grandmother planted those so that they would have fresh greens on demand for the floral business, so they didn't have to go to the flower market. It would be the freshest as you can and whenever you needed it. So that I've learned so much, through this whole process. So yeah, it actually, Lisa's husband, who's also a botanist, I took them to the inside of the house, and he's the one that solved the mystery that been a mystery to my parents and I of where would they have cut the house in half? And if this is a house, we thought it was cut in half this way. We couldn't see the seams, and he realized, because of the way the floor was in my bedroom, that it was different, a little bit different pattern. So he realized the house was cut in half this way, which makes sense, because then that half of the house would have gone towards the hill, and then they would bring the other half in to join it. Yeah. So he solved the mystery for years.
Yeah, so the house was built in 1911, and they moved it in 1929.
1929.
looks like.
Actually, Kathy Gudis, when I first met you, and we're walking, I was walking you through, you're the one that found the cornerstone that had, Harry Brigham's initials, and also, was it Elsie Martin?
Yeah, A.C. Martin.
A.C. Martin.
Did, who is, an architect in LA of
Yeah. He
repute, but he did an addition.
He did an addition,
Yeah.
or else it was a contractor. They had their initials on the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
A.C. Martin, so he designed City Hall in L.A., but his name was on the plans for the back garage, served as a garage and also a retaining wall. Yeah. So I go. Hi.
When you're working with sound, do you find yourself thinking about psychoacoustic ghost tones? And when you were in there, did you ever feel like, oh, I remember hearing this sound when I was a kid? Did you ever visit any of the same sounds?
Huh. I don't know about psychoacoustic ghosts. Yeah, but there are sounds I call mind sounds that whenever I have the opportunity for different spaces to, like for theater, to incorporate the picadillos of a space to use, like, live, so that the space becomes a performer. And so I call them mind sounds. Like, so people, if they're conscious, are thinking, did I think that or did I hear that? One time at the theater off Jackson that used to be Northwest Asian American Theater, which is downstairs in the basement, and right above it was the original Wing Loop Museum. And they could never have the theater going the same time as the museum because you could hear everything upstairs if you're in the theater, and upstairs you could hear the theater going on. So I used that for one. It was a international artist collaboration, and it was about, there's one sad part about the Chinese being rounded up and put on ships. And so, God bless them, I had Wing Luk employees on the evenings at a certain part go with a Chinese gong, the ones that go gong, kind of like those, but a wailing, so it's like a wailing sound, but I had them run across their space above the people live, so that besides the wailing, you could physically hear the sound traveling. And so it's, so those are the kinds of things that I love working with. What are ways to invite the space to be a performer in the piece? I don't know the answer to your question, but it was great that I could talk about that.
I actually want to ask Brigid a question, which is, in sitting in the space, obviously it shuts down and then it starts again, which is wonderful. But here you are, and Susie, with so many hours of people talking, as well as, right, you recorded all these people coming through the house,
during the
telling
estate sale,
stories, having conversations. You recorded those as well as other things.
Yeah.
So how did you pare all of this down to be not just Susie playing the house, but is there a narrative at play in that sound that, because you tell stories, and so how did you piece that together to be a story when it's playing the house and the sounds?
It's interesting because I'm a huge art addict, so I go around and see art absolutely everywhere I can, and I could have probably listed another 5 artists that have influenced my way of looking at different things. But what I felt as far as experiencing the house went, that I in being in the house, and you've been in the house, I just wanted to drop people inside of the house and let them have their own experience of the house. I feel very strongly, especially with historic architecture, that it's about interaction and experience that gets people interested in spaces and gets them to advocate, on behalf of something. So I could tell you a story, or I could drop a few doors opening and things clacking in a story, and you'd be like, oh, I get a sense of that space. But if I can put you in the middle of that space and you get to look around like I get to look around, and you get to wonder like what's behind that door over there, and you get to hear the cars beeping in the Trader Joe's next door, and you get to have your own experience. And just like you were talking about, everybody that walks into that piece is gonna have a different experience because you have your own lived experience related to sound and your ideas about how you make sense of the world based on that stuff. And I didn't want to tell you how you were supposed to experience this. I just wanted you to experience it and have your own your own thing. So I can still do the documentary piece, the podcast. I'm still collecting info. I really wanted, when I approached this thing, I wanted to kind of see what the house could tell us about these unknown histories in Los Angeles. One of them being the experience of the Japanese Americans that lived in that space, but nobody would necessarily know it, and yet they were a huge part of that neighborhood and establishing Los Angeles. And it just made me so mad that we didn't know that story. So one of the things that I hope can come out of this piece is that because it is sort of a kinetic, visceral experience, it would be amazing if we could set this up next to the other archival material that came out of the house and activate sort of the archives with this experiential piece, so that you would understand that these people lived in this space and experienced it on a daily basis, and you would have this experience, but then you would know who had been there before you and kind of be more interested in, their story as a result of that. So that's my hope, is that this piece can activate the archives in some way, and that we can all learn more about their history, because there's so much in the archives. I mean, it is vast. They have every receipt from every interaction from like 1901 until whatever, including receipts that tell just heartbreaking stories of having to pay a cab to take their great-grandmother from a hospital to bring her to incarceration in Manzanar so that she could die with her family members. They have the receipt from that transfer, and they had to pay for it. And so these are the types of things that I didn't know about. And that was one of the things of being with Susie. I would be like, what's in this drawer? And she's like, I don't know, let's look. And then we'd open it up, and it'd be like this vast archive about Manzanar, because they'd kept everything. So it's hard to kind of make those letters active or whatever, but if you step into their space and you see this place that they lived in, and the dining room is their office for their business. They did their paperwork on the dining room table. It's where they celebrated, family events, all that stuff. You get to walk into that, and then if you read a letter where they're begging for the transfer of their family member so that they can come and die with the family, you might have a better sense of why we need to preserve houses like that, or why we need to tell these stories, because most of us probably don't know about those details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as far as every drawer was filled with, well, it's like Dan Jordan from, again, LA, the estate sales. Besides, this is like he says, after a while working, he goes, so your family is your whole family was a big group of Tuckers. And I said, be careful how you pronounce that, please. But it's true. Every place, like, okay, I'll put this here so I won't forget it. And then and actually, I found myself still doing the same thing. Yeah. So I think it's hereditary.
Susie, at one point in the piece, you walk through and do some vocalization, and it's wonderfully playful. I'm curious, was it just pure vocalization, or was there some kind of meaning or actual text?
So, okay, there is no are you talking about the what I call ethnoscat?
Yeah.
Okay. There's no meaning. Sometimes it's easier for me to make sounds rather than come up with the words. And so this was sort of like that. The overtone part were things that were self-taught. I always had a low voice. And I remember in grammar school, I felt like a bullfrog because it went blah when everybody else was. So I was so happy when the boys' voices started changing, because I wasn't so alone. But my mom had me go into girls' choir, which I could never sing that high. So I would lip sync, but being surrounded, except for the very low pitches, but being surrounded by all those chords, and I think that awakens something. Also, when I was 6 or 7, I started kendo. It's Japanese fencing, together with iaido, which I still practice and teach. It's Japanese swordsmanship. But for kendo, you learn how to use kiai. And I was written about in some Japanese newspaper about this little short person, girl, that had a loud voice, and it was like a freedom of voice too. Yeah. But then when I came, by this time I was up here going to Seattle University, and after I graduated, I was working, or gallery. There's a contemporary art gallery. It was new music, new art, new performance, new literary. And that's the first time I heard Meredith Monk. And that's the first time I heard overtone singing. And those overtones are natural sounds that everybody naturally produces. If you say any word and bring it out, you'll pull out the overtone by the vowels. Like word. Anyhow, if you in your car, the car is a great place because you have the windshield. That's a natural, feedback, so you can hear yourself. And if you draw out any word, you're going to hear the overtones. So all these years I've been practicing that, and then later I was studying tube and throat singing in the Kagura. But the ethno-scat is something I just came up with because it just felt right. Yeah. For huh? Want to do it with me? Tikataka-pong tiketondonsa. Chiyakatakatansa-katombom. Mbako. Tikatapaptakatpakatan. Actually, maybe these are instruments that I hide behind, but it does seem like it does first come with voice. And that's something that I think, a lot of old music traditions, like Indian and Japanese, and a lot of it is oral tradition, whereas by syllables for the for the rhythms and the beats and the different tones or different timbres. So, yeah, And it's just, anyhow, for me, it's just easy sometimes making sounds than trying to think of the right words. And so I end up making sounds and gestures. But people usually understand what I'm trying to say.
All right, well, I think everyone's been sitting for a while, so we're available if anyone has any additional questions, but I'd like to free you from your seat because I know that you're in tight quarters. So thank you for coming out.
Now I have to put my toys away. No, this is good.